The grand hall fell silent. Guests in black suits and sparkling dresses froze mid-conversation. At the top of the marble staircase, a little girl ran straight into the arms of the host, the man of the hour. "Daddy!" she cried out, her voice echoing through the room. Richard Whitmore stood paralyzed. His eyes dropped to her small arm, and there it was. That birthmark, the exact same one he had. Richard didn't move. The girl, Lily, clung to his leg, smiling proudly, completely unaware of the silence she had caused. Around them, eyes darted from guest to guest, waiting for someone to say something, anything. But no one did. Across the room, a woman stood frozen near the kitchen door. Her name was Maria Bennett, the housemaid, the one no one noticed until now. Her face was pale, lips trembling, hands gripping her apron as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the ground. 7 years she had carried the truth in silence. 7 years hiding what could destroy a family and shatter her own. What you're about to witness is not just a scandal. It's the unraveling of a secret buried in shame. A story of rejection, courage, and a little girl who unknowingly forced the past to finally speak. And once the truth comes out, nothing will ever be the same. Long before the silence of that night, Maria Bennett moved through the Whitmore estate like a shadow. Quiet, precise, invisible. She had been hired 6 years earlier, after showing up at the back door with a baby on her hip and nothing but desperation in her eyes. The staff pitied her. Victoria Whitmore, cold, elegant, untouchable, allowed her to stay out of necessity. Richard didn't argue. Lily was barely 1 year old then. Now at 7 she was bright, curious, and full of questions, especially about Mr. Whitmore. "Why doesn't he talk to us, Mommy?" Maria would smile, kneel beside her and whisper, "Because he's busy, honey. Very important people have very little time." But deep down, Maria knew it wasn't time Richard lacked. It was distance. A distance he had carefully maintained since the day he saw Lily for the first time and pretended not to recognize her eyes or her birthmark. That mark on Lily's arm haunted Maria. Shaped like a half-moon, it was identical to the one on Richard's wrist. A coincidence, she had once told herself, but she no longer believed in those. At night, while folding laundry in the servants' quarters, Maria would pause when she heard Richard's voice echoing through the hall. Once, she had loved that voice, trusted it, believed it when he whispered promises no man of his status should have made to a housemaid. But those days were gone. Now she kept her head down, avoided his gaze, and focused on saving money. She planned to leave quietly once she had enough, take Lily and start over somewhere far from this golden prison. Still, part of her held back, out of fear, out of pride, maybe even out of a longing that hadn't quite died. The real conflict began when Lily started slipping into Richard's study to leave him drawings. He never responded, but Maria found them, days later, neatly stacked in the trash. One night, Lily asked, "Do you think he likes my pictures?" Maria swallowed hard and said, "I think he sees them." She didn't say what she really felt, that Richard saw everything and chose every single day not to see them. That night, after Lily's question about the drawings, Maria sat awake long after her daughter had fallen asleep. The soft sound of Lily's breathing was the only thing that kept her from breaking completely. She opened a small notebook she kept hidden beneath her mattress. Inside were notes, plans, little sketches of a different life. A bakery, a tiny house, a town where no one knew the name Whitmore. It wasn't just a dream, it was her escape plan. Every time Richard passed by Lily without a glance, every time she was told to use the service entrance, every time she overheard staff whispering about her, she added another line to the plan. But deep down, Maria still carried something she never admitted out loud, the hope that one day Richard would do the right thing. Maybe he'd see Lily playing in the garden and feel it. Maybe he'd look at her and finally say the word neither of them had ever said, daughter. It was foolish, she knew that, but the heart is rarely wise. And then came the Whitmore Foundation gala. a lavish event hosted at the estate each year. That morning, Maria was assigned to serve drinks, even though it wasn't her usual role. Victoria insisted on having the full staff presentable. She looked at Maria a little too long, her eyes lingering on Lily, who stood behind her mother, dressed in her best clothes. "She's a pretty girl," Victoria said with a tight smile. "But perhaps she should stay in the back tonight. These events aren't for children." Maria nodded silently, feeling a familiar chill in her chest. But Lily didn't listen. That evening, as the hall filled with music and laughter, Lily wandered through the crowd, looking for Richard. She held a drawing in her hand, one she had worked on all week. When she found him near the grand piano, she reached up and tugged gently at his coat. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, eyes wide, "I made this for you." He looked down, saw the drawing, and froze. Victoria saw it too. Her eyes narrowed. Richard didn't take the paper. He turned sharply to Maria, who had just arrived behind Lily. "Keep her out of here," he said, voice low, teeth clenched. "I don't want scenes." Maria's face went pale. Guests nearby glanced over, sensing tension. That night he called her into his office. "You've overstayed your welcome," he said flatly. "Finish the week, then go." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look at her. He simply ended everything, like she had never mattered, like Lily had never happened. Maria packed in silence. The bags were small, just enough for her and Lily. Clothes, a few toys, a framed photo. Everything else they had ever known would be left behind. She moved like a ghost through the tiny servants' quarters, each item folded with shaking hands. Her heart pounded, but her face remained blank. She couldn't let Lily see her break. From the bed, Lily watched. "Are we leaving because of me?" she asked softly. Maria turned. Her lips parted, but no words came. How could she explain that their whole life had always been hanging by a thread, that one man's silence had shaped every corner of their world? "No, sweetheart," she finally whispered, kneeling beside her. "We're leaving because sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind." "But Mr. Whitmore is your friend," Lily said. Maria smiled gently, brushing the hair from her daughter's face. "Not anymore." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Maria sat alone in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea she couldn't drink. One of the older maids, Mrs. Dorsey, joined her. "He's a coward, Maria," she said, not unkindly. "Always has been." Maria nodded, but her throat tightened. "He was different before everything." Mrs. Dorsey hesitated. "You're not the first to say that." Maria blinked. "What do you mean?" But Mrs. Dorsey only sighed, patted her hand, and stood to leave. Later, in the dark, Maria stared at the ceiling and remembered. 7 years ago, Richard had whispered promises in that same house. He wasn't married then. He had looked her in the eye, said he wasn't like the others, said he'd take care of everything. When she found out she was pregnant, he vanished behind silence and legal walls. His lawyer delivered a check and a warning. But Maria didn't take the money. She came back months later, desperate, and accepted a position as staff because she had no one else. She had watched her child grow up in the shadows of marble halls and crystal chandeliers, too afraid to speak the truth. Now she was being discarded again, like trash. The next evening, the farewell dinner for the staff overlapped with the last day of the gala. Maria tried to keep Lily out of sight, but the little girl, wearing the same yellow dress from the first time she walked, slipped past her. In the main hall, Lily's eyes scanned the room, searching for the only man she'd ever wanted to impress. She saw him and ran. Maria realized too late. She followed just in time to see Lily throw her arms around Richard Whitmore's leg and say with all the joy and innocence in the world, "Daddy." The music stopped. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Dozens of eyes turned. Maria froze in the archway. Her blood turned to ice. Richard looked down and saw it. On Lily's arm, bare, exposed by her short sleeve, was the unmistakable half-moon birthmark, the same one he had. The room fell into an unnatural silence, the kind that hums with judgment. Victoria stood near the piano, her glass of champagne trembling in her hand. Maria stepped forward instinctively, but couldn't reach her in time. "What did you say?" Richard asked, barely audible. Lily repeated, quieter now. "You're my daddy. Mommy told me." Gasps, murmurs, a ripple of disbelief across the guests. Richard's face twisted, first with shock, then anger. This is a mistake," he said, stepping back. His voice cracked the silence like glass under pressure. He looked directly at Maria. "What did you tell her?" Maria couldn't answer. Her mouth opened, but the shame flooded in too fast. "She's just a child," she managed, voice shaking. "She wanted to." "Take her out," he interrupted. "Now!" His words weren't loud, but they struck harder than any scream. Maria took Lily's hand, heart pounding in her ears, and led her away as dozens of eyes followed. She didn't cry. Not yet, but something inside her shattered, something she had been holding together for too long, and all she could think as the doors closed behind them was, "I should have never come back." Have you ever felt erased? Like your truth didn't matter, like your presence was an inconvenience to someone else's comfort? If you've ever lived a moment like that, share it in the comments. You never know. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to feel less alone tonight. And if this story is touching something in you, keep watching. It's far from over. The following morning, Maria didn't get out of bed. Lily sat beside her, quietly coloring in a worn notebook. The little girl hadn't said much since the party. Something had shifted in her too, something Maria couldn't fix with soft words or bedtime songs. Outside, the sun rose gently over the Whitmore estate, casting gold across the curtains, but inside, everything felt grey. Maria stared at the ceiling, replaying every second of the night before. The gasps, the look on Richard's face, the shame pressing against her like an iron wall. She had planned to leave in silence. Now, everyone knew. The door creaked. Lily climbed up beside her, curling into the space beneath her arm. "Are you mad at me?" the little girl asked. Maria turned her head, stunned. "No, baby. Why would you think that?" Lily hesitated. "Because I said it out loud. What you always tell me not to say." Maria swallowed hard. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just said what was true." Lily blinked, unsure. "Then why did everyone look at me like that?" Maria couldn't answer. Instead, she pulled her daughter close, her fingers resting gently on the small birthmark that had shaken a room full of strangers. And then came the question that changed everything. "Are you ashamed of me, Mommy?" Maria froze. It felt like something cracked open inside her. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Never. You are the bravest part of me." Lily smiled, small but honest. "Then why are we hiding?" The words settled like thunder in Maria's chest. Why were they still hiding? Why was she still afraid? She had given up everything to protect her daughter's truth, only to spend 7 years pretending it didn't exist. She kissed Lily's forehead and stood up for the first time that day. There was no more running, no more shame. She wouldn't be silent anymore, not for Richard, not for his reputation, and especially not at the cost of Lily's dignity. She reached into the drawer, pulled out a small envelope and began to write a letter, not to Richard, but to Victoria Whitmore. If the truth was going to destroy something, it better not be Maria's soul. Maria didn't expect an answer. She placed the envelope on Victoria Whitmore's desk before sunrise, hoping, perhaps foolishly, that the woman would read it. Inside were no accusations, no bitterness, just the truth, the full story. And one plea: don't punish her for being born. By midday, the house was unusually quiet. The staff avoided eye contact. Maria continued her duties like nothing had changed, though every step felt heavier than the last. That afternoon, one of the butlers approached her. "Mrs. Whitmore would like to see you, alone." Maria's heart thundered. She walked slowly toward the library, her hands damp with nerves. When she entered, Victoria stood near the fireplace, a glass of wine in her hand, unreadable as always. She didn't speak right away. Then, "I always knew there was something," Maria swallowed. "I never wanted to hurt you." Victoria turned to face her. "No, but you let me live a lie in my own home." I was trying to survive, Maria said quietly. I had no power. A long pause. Then Victoria did something unexpected. She sat down. Tell me everything, she said, and Maria did. She told her about the affair, about the pregnancy, about coming back not for revenge, but because she had nowhere else to go. She spoke with dignity, without begging or rage. Victoria listened. When it was over, she asked only one question. Does he know for sure? Maria nodded. He saw the birthmark. Victoria sighed and leaned back. Then it's time he admits it. In that moment, something shifted. Not in Richard, but in Victoria. She didn't rage. She didn't scream. She simply stood up, walked to the door and said, You're not going anywhere. Not yet. Maria blinked. You're not firing me? I'm not protecting him either, Victoria said. This house has lived on silence long enough. For the first time in years, Maria allowed herself a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She wasn't alone anymore. Not completely. Not anymore. But not everyone welcomed the truth. The following day, Richard called a private meeting with Victoria. Maria wasn't invited, but she could hear the echoes from the hallway. Raised voices. Frustration. The unmistakable sound of a man cornered by consequences. Later, a letter arrived at Maria's door. A formal request from the Whitmore family's lawyer. Carefully worded, cold. They offered a generous sum, hush money, in exchange for a signed statement that would declare Richard had no confirmed parental connection to the child. Maria sat at the small kitchen table, reading the letter again and again. It felt like déjà vu. A repeat of 7 years ago, just more expensive. She crumpled the paper. This time she wouldn't disappear. But standing up for herself wasn't without cost. Rumors began circulating among the staff. Some whispered that she was blackmailing the family. Others treated Lily like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Even at Lily's school, things changed. A parent pulled their child from a group project. A teacher avoided eye contact. No one said anything directly, but Maria felt it in every sideways glance. One afternoon, after a particularly cold dismissal from a fellow maid, Maria found herself in the laundry room, tears blurring her vision. She had thought telling the truth would bring relief. Instead, it brought isolation. Was it worth it? She sat down on a bench and closed her eyes, exhausted. That's when she felt a small hand slip into hers. Lily. Are they mad at us? The girl asked. Maria looked into those eyes, Richard's eyes, and smiled through her ache. They're confused, she said, and scared. People are scared of what they don't understand. Lily nodded solemnly, then whispered, But you're not scared anymore. Maria felt her throat tighten. No, she said, not anymore. That night, Victoria called another meeting, this time with Richard, Maria, and a family attorney present. Richard still looked for ways around it. Let's keep this private, he said. We can support her, quietly. Maria raised her head. I don't want your money, she said. I want her truth to be recognized. Richard didn't respond, but for the first time, he didn't walk away. And that silence, Maria realized, was the beginning of something cracking. A week later, Victoria made an announcement. A family gathering would be held at the estate, just relatives and close associates, nothing public, nothing dramatic. But Maria knew what it meant. She dressed Lily carefully that day, light blue dress, hair braided, her favorite shoes. When Lily asked what the gathering was for, Maria crouched down and said gently, It's time for some people to hear the truth from the person who should have said it long ago. The guests arrived slowly. Cousins, siblings, Richard's 2 sons from a previous marriage. Everyone curious, everyone tense. Richard stood near the grand staircase, his posture stiff, hands behind his back. He looked like a man preparing for court. Maria and Lily entered last. All eyes turned. No one spoke. Then Victoria stepped forward, breaking the silence. There's something this family needs to hear, she said calmly. And Richard is going to be the one to say it. His jaw clenched. He glanced at Maria, then at Lily. He hesitated. Maria's heart pounded. The humiliation of that night threatened to resurface, but then Lily looked up at her with quiet, steady eyes, the kind that trusted her to stand tall. So she did. "If you won't speak," she said, voice steady, "then I will." She turned to the room. "I've worked in this house for nearly 7 years. Many of you don't know me beyond a title, but what you need to know is this. Your uncle, your brother, your friend. He's not just the man who built a business empire. He's also the father of my daughter." Gasps. Disbelief. Someone muttered something under their breath. Richard stepped forward, face tight. "Maria." "No," she said gently. "You've had years to say it. I'm saying it now. Not for me. For her." She placed her hand on Lily's shoulder. The girl stayed close, eyes wide, but calm. "I don't want your money. I don't want revenge. I want my daughter to grow up knowing that she wasn't a mistake, that she has a name, a story, and the right to be seen." For a moment, the room stood suspended, and then Richard finally spoke. He walked slowly toward Lily. Kneeling, he looked at her, not as a burden or a threat, but as someone he had refused to see for far too long. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve any of this." He looked up at Maria. His eyes were red. "I was afraid of what it would mean, of what I would lose." "You already lost it," she replied. "Now you get to decide what you build from what's left." Richard turned back to Lily. "I should have said this years ago, but I'm your father." Lily didn't smile right away. She just looked at him carefully, studying his face. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a drawing, another one, folded and worn. "This one's for you," she said. "You can keep it this time." He took it in trembling hands. Across the room, Victoria exhaled slowly, and Maria, though still full of scars, felt something release. For the first time in years, she wasn't carrying it alone. For the first time in years, she wasn't carrying it alone. Weeks passed. The estate quieted. The whispers faded. Life resumed, slowly, differently. Maria no longer wore a uniform. She had stepped down from her role as housemaid shortly after the gathering. Not out of bitterness, but because it was time. She and Lily moved into a small rental house a few miles away. Nothing extravagant, just a space that was theirs. A garden, a kitchen where Lily could bake cookies without needing permission. A front door that no one else had a key to. Richard started showing up, at first once a week, then more often. Always nervous, always unsure. But Lily welcomed him with the simple, fearless heart of a child who just wanted to be seen. Maria never asked for anything more than that. Victoria, too, changed in subtle ways. The next time she visited Maria, she brought a potted plant and said, without pretense, "She's part of our family. I see that now." It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. And for Maria, that was enough. She still bore the scars of silence, the ache of being invisible in rooms she helped hold together. But she had learned something powerful. The truth can be buried, but not erased, and the people who spend their lives hiding it are rarely the ones with the most to lose. Lily would grow up knowing she came from a story that began in shadows, but chose to step into the light. That was her legacy, and Maria's too. Maria's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting, but in being willing to be seen. To stand in the room, speak the truth, and not look away, even when no one claps, because being acknowledged, being named, being known, that's what every soul longs for. And you? Have you ever had to carry a truth no one wanted to hear? Have you ever been treated like your story didn't matter? Tell me in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to find their own. And if this story moves something in you, leave a like. That helps this channel grow and reach more people who need stories that speak to the heart. If you believe in stories about pain, resilience, and quiet strength, subscribe. The next one might be the one your soul's been waiting for.